my shorts.
Now, just before you had heard that the Animaniacs reboot was happening, you found yourself in the middle of a health crisis. You were diagnosed with throat cancer, and you went through crazy. Like, you went through the horrendous recovery and chemotherapy and all of that. It's Oral Cancer Awareness Month this April.
It is, yes.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing to help raise awareness and sort of a little bit about your road to recovery and all of that.
Well, again, folks, this is why Dave is so good at what he does, because you've had this lovely little thread of joy and happiness and all the extent to which these characters are important to all of us. And then, as there's an old axiom that we make plans and God laughs, whoever he or she is. Yeah. So one day I went to visit my doctor, having had a lump on the left side of my neck for a few months. And it turned out to be stage 3 metastatic squamous cell carcinoma of the throat at the base of my tongue. And to make a long story short, I was told at the very beginning, Mr. Paulson, we're virtually sure we can cure you. This is not remission, cure you. But before we do, we almost have to kill you. And I laughed out loud because that's how my brain works.
Yeah.
And my pinky. And so I was told right up front that it's curable. Are you going to be able to do your job at the same level? We don't know. But you're already 60 years old. And, statistically, you still got a few years left. This is slow growing. But by slow, we mean that in 2 years, if you don't do anything, you'll be very uncomfortable. And 3.5 or 4, you're going to be so. And it's not a really pretty way to go out for obvious reasons. Mouth, throat, they got to start hacking off. We've seen the wonderful movie critic, Roger Ebert, suffered from that. And by the time he left, it's pretty nasty. So obviously it didn't take me any time at all to say, I'm in. And as a result of incredible good fortune of having world-class healthcare and a pretty strong constitution, a wonderful family, I got through it. 5 years ago at this time, I was in the middle of my radiation and chemo, and it was starting to beat me up. And it did. But nothing happened to me that I was not told would happen. And that's precisely what I asked for. But my cancer experience, Dave, is not left with a silver lining. It is absolutely a platinum lining, primarily because nice young men like you and young women and other people who give me this glorious opportunity to talk about it during, Oral Cancer Awareness Month. I am now the spokestune for the Head and Neck Cancer Alliance. So you folks can go to headandneck.org and you'll see yours truly, and I discuss my cancer experience. But more importantly, there's all sorts of important real-time information. Over 600,000 people worldwide will be diagnosed with a similar or different version of a cancer that affects their mouth, their tongue, their tonsils, their voice box, just exactly like mine. But in most cases, if it's caught early enough, it's curable. Not something where you go, but it sometimes requires surgery, sometimes not. But it is so important. Please go look. And getting screened is simple. Dentist, ear, nose, and throat doc. In my case, it was my traditional internist who put his hands on it and said, not good. In 5 seconds, not good. I want you to see an ENT today. Today? Yeah, you got the time? Well, yeah, I reckon I do. Great. So because of that, because it can be diagnosed and sussed out pretty quickly, I'm here. And the good news is I can do my job.
Yeah.
and no one is any the wiser.
Yeah.
But what is most important about this lovely exchange that you have been so kind to offer me today, Dave, is that a year from now, a couple of years from now, hell, 20, who knows? Maybe when I'm dust, somebody's going to be able to listen to this and watch this, and someone whom that person loves will have just been diagnosed. So they can say, hey, Uncle Bob, check this out. There's this guy, Ron Pullman. I don't remember his name, but you know how much we love watching Pinky and the Brain together? That guy had exactly the sort of throat cancer that you've been diagnosed with. But the point is that you're going to listen to this guy, and we watch him on TV every day or every week, post-treatment. Yeah. That's what's important. You got this, Uncle Bob. You got to see what this guy has to say, because the good news is that, yeah, it's pretty scary, but you can do this. This guy does it for a living, and he finished out his career and his life working. He died from something else, not throat cancer. And that's why this is important, and why I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity for me to talk about it. It's a wonderful way for us to end our really nice chat.
Absolutely, yes. If anyone out there is watching and wants to learn more about that, you have got a enormous chunk of this book is dedicated to that and your battle and stuff. I found it so inspirational, and all of that, and the way you were so candidly open about talking about it all, I think is so wonderful too. Briefly before we close out, it is also Autism Awareness Month,
yes.
And I know this is something that is near and dear to you as well. You've worked with the Autism Foundation for many years. Can you just tell us about this too?
I can, and I'm so glad you mentioned that. Obviously, we are bombarded every month with, oh, by the way, it's National Bobby Sock Month, or it's National High-Heeled Sneaker Month. And I totally get that. Yeah. However, these are important circumstances. Cancer, obviously, is always an issue. Mm-hmm. I'm now an expert on that with respect to my treatment, so I can talk about it. I'm also at least an anecdotal expert with both the challenges and the gifts of folks on the autism spectrum have to share with us, and we can learn from it. It turns out, again, unbeknownst to me, until I started putting myself out there in the public, it turns out that often folks on the autism spectrum are deeply affected by animated characters. They literally speak to them. Yeah. Often we find people who are 25, 28, 30 who have been relatively nonverbal, Dave, until Darkwing Duck shows up, or the latest Pixar film. And often we find out from their parents and loved ones, and I've been told this in person dozens of times. Young Matthew here, Rob, is 26. And they would start to get tearful and say, Matthew was nonverbal until a cousin exposed him to Animaniacs. He watched other shows, but for whatever reason, Yakko really nailed it. Yakko really spoke to him, and it was like a laser beam. Yeah. And we brought Matthew here today. We drove 4 or 5 hours, and we're sorry, but respectfully, I'm not sure if he knows who you are. I don't give a shit about that. Yeah. What Matthew wants to hear is Yakko. And my wife and I want to video that experience. And I'm telling you what, my friend, it happens over and over and over again. So that when Yakko starts talking to Matthew is like a laser beam, knows every damn word to Yakko's world, and is now verbal and communicative because of the fire that Yakko, not Rob, and it's not false modesty, that Yakko lit under Matthew to start to speak. And his parents, can you imagine what that means to people who love Matthew? They were able to leverage that so that Matthew now is able to deal with the challenges of autism. But it turns out that he's very gifted in another way, like many folks on the spectrum, but he's able to communicate that now. Yeah. And oh my God, how on earth can you quantify that relative compliment? This is not about money at all. the only money people have spent vis-a-vis Yakko and Animaniacs and this young man and his family is to buy a ticket and the gas to get into this particular event in which I happen to be appearing. That's it. It's about the joy and the empathy and passion that is lit in a young man's or young woman's life as a result of some wacky cartoon character. Yeah. That's not a small thing. And it's not just me. It could be SpongeBob. It could be sports. It could be David Beckham. It could be Greg Norman. That there's an autistic golfer who says, "Whoa, the great white shark really lit it up for me, mate." That's all it takes. And so if that is something that I'm able to be involved with, I'm in, man. I'm totally in. So thank you for asking. There's Absolutely. So much to learn out there.
Yeah.
And if we're willing to listen, we can.
Absolutely. Hey everyone, if you haven't yet, smash that big old subscribe button up on your screen to keep up to date with all my content, and hit that like button down below. Also, don't forget to check me out on social media, and please consider supporting me over on Patreon for as little as $1 a month for exclusive videos, early access content, and to get your name up on the screen. Thanks again for watching.